Hello, we are here with Diallo Riddle, creator of Sherman Showcase, Comedy Central Southside, a writer on Jimmy Fallon's live show, and much, much more. My name is Noah Washington. I'm with Blurred Binder, Black Press USA. So let's get into it. First, I like to say I like the glasses.
Hey, you can't knock a black man in glasses. Well, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to hit a black. You're not supposed to hit any man in glass. Not supposed to hit any person in glasses. Let's start it over. No, I like good frames, man. And I actually saw another black man wearing these frames one time. I was like, look, man, I will never wear these around you, but I gotta know what brand that is and what time. So because I've been rocking the same Wayfarers forever. The Ray-Ban Wayfarers for about 10 years.
It's the way to go. It's the way to go. So let's get into right here. So let's start with Sherman Showcase, a show. It's reminiscent of Soul Train and so many variety shows that came before it. How is the pitch? Because it's very stylized. When you were going into the offices at AMC, how did you break that down?
It's funny. We sold it to IFC, and at the time, the head of IFC was this guy named Peter Aronson. And we had known him just through working in the business, and he had also been a producer on a David Allen Greer show called Chocolate News. And we went there and we were just like, hey, we have a show. It's going to be a little bit like Soul Train, but what 30 Rock was to SNL, our show will be to Soul Train. And he was like, oh, I get this immediately. I want to buy it. So he bought it within the first minute of us pitching, which anybody who's ever pitched these Hollywood networks, like, that's the dream, that they are so on board with your vision that they immediately buy it in the room. So that's always, that was the pitch. Now, we always knew that it wasn't quite true. Sometimes you pitch these things and you're basically pitching a Trojan horse, because we knew that we wanted to do more than that. Bashir and I have always wanted to have a show where we could do basically anything that we loved, whether it was music or broad comedy, or like a parody of a movie that we love, or a TV show we love, or fake commercials. Like, we always knew it wanted to be sketch, but we also knew that we wanted something that was going to be, just very free and like a nice big sandbox to play in. So that's why we ended up going there, because they had shows like Documentary Now and Portlandia, and we were like, yeah, that's the kind of show that we want to do. So that's how we ended up over there.
Now, how did you get John Legend on board?
Believe it or not, my wife and his wife have been friends going back to, I think, 2009. Like, this is when Chrissy Teigen was already famous, but she wasn't like the Chrissy Teigen famous that it is today. Like, you definitely would be in some situations where people would be like, oh, here's John Legend and his wife, Chrissy Teigen. Nowadays, I feel like they're playing times. You're like, oh, here's Chrissy Teigen and her husband. So, like, it was a very different situation back then. Me and John had a mutual friend. I took my wife to his mutual friend's baby shower. And I hit it off with John, she hit it off with Chrissy, and we were all friends. And it's been cool to see, like, Chrissy's trajectory go like that at the same time that John's trajectory has also been on the up. And so it's been interesting to be privy to see that climb, because we remember an earlier time.
Oh, wow. Okay, so your show takes musical artists and puts them in a more acting spotlight. Some of these musicians have never really acted before. How do you approach them and convince them to come to the other side?
Well, you don't have to convince them. I think it was either Dave Chappelle or Questlove. One of them was like, every musician has a hidden comedian inside, because comedy and music are very much alike. Like, there's a rhythm to having, there's talk of having good timing. It's one of those things where, like, it doesn't seem like they should be related, but they kind of are. And there are so many funny people who do music, and unless you are on the level that you're going to be on, Saturday Night Live as the musical guest, chances are you never get the chance to show people your other talents. And we were like, hey, we want to show people how funny artists like Vic Mensa, Questlove, and John Legend, and Quincy Jones. Like, these are people who don't often get asked to do comedy. And sometimes it's just kind of off brand. Like, I remember when we came up with this idea for the rapper Common to be in season 1, I was like, is he gonna think this is funny? And like, John was like, yeah, Rashid loves to laugh. He calls him Rashid. And so we got with Common, and Common laughed at it. And it's kind of a silly sketch, but it's a funny sketch. And I think that's always been key. People who have good taste in music usually have good taste in comedy. I like to think that we have good taste in comedy. So we don't pitch them any just old BS. But as far as bringing them to the comedy, no, I think a lot of these people are dying to show off their other talents. And a show like Sherman Showcase gives them a chance to do that.
So during your Juneteenth special, which you can catch on Hulu for those listening, John,
the special is on AMC.com, just so you know.
Yes,
it's not on Hulu yet. Season 1 is on Hulu though.
So during the special, John Legend makes reference to the famous rapper Drake and how did you guys really try to book Drake?
Well, yes. The short answer is yes. We've worked with Drake a lot of times. We worked with him on a Super Bowl commercial. Anytime Drake hosts a TV an award show, like when he hosted the ESPYs, we wrote those sketches. When he hosted the NBA Awards, we wrote a lot of that. So Drake is somebody we worked with on many occasions, and we just couldn't make it work with his schedule. But I'll tell you, Drake still came through it another way because we had this idea that Duke Ellington was going to sing a song by his brother Drake Ellington. And so we had already shot John singing a sort of a 1920s ragtime version of Big Rings off of the What a Time to Be Alive album that Drake did with Future about 5 years ago. We'd already shot it. And getting the license to clear that music is usually really expensive. But as a favor to us, Drake was like, don't worry about it. Just pay Future's, publishing company and we'll be good. And then we got to use it. So, your relationships in this business can come through in unexpected ways. But yeah, of course, we'd love to have Drake on a Sherman Showcase. We think, he's another person who's a comedy nerd. There are a lot of comedy nerds in the world of music. And I feel like we make Sherman Showcase for all the comedy nerds out there. I'll give you one example. Questlove and I are both huge Prince fans. And Questlove, hit me. He was like, do you know the story about the time Prince worked with Stevie Nicks? And I was like, from Fleetwood Mac? No, I don't know that story. He's like, look it up. So I did. And there's this great story about how she heard Little Red Corvette while driving up to her honeymoon in Malibu. And she loved it. And she reached out to Prince and she was like, hey, will you come work on a song with me? He met her in the studio for, I think, a sum total of 30 minutes and provided the most familiar bass line and electronic keyboards in the Stevie Nicks canon on a song called Stand Back. And I mean, I don't even know what that song, it's hard to imagine that song without these elements, but Prince came in there with, did it in 30 minutes and told her, please don't give me any credit on the song, but give me 50% of the royalties on this song. And I thought that was such a cool story. So in episode 3 of Sherman Showcase, which is sort of our Salute to Prince episode, our character, who's a stand-in for Prince named Charade, goes into the studio with an artist who's like Stevie Nicks, and he plays all the instruments. And little details like that are the kind of details that we feel like real music nerds pick up on. Mm-hmm. It's hopefully a funny episode no matter what, but if you get that extra layer, of the joke, then you get an extra layer of satisfaction. That's always been what we've tried to do with Sherman Showcase, is give that extra layer of, oh man, that's a reference to something that I thought only I knew about, like that means something to us.
Wow. So within the show Sherman Showcase, you make references to comic books, Stan Lee, all branching out of the music nerd into comic books.
We're just nerds, honestly. I mean, let's just be honest about it. Like, why lie,
Glasses are a different way.
I actually sold my comic book collection to buy my ticket to fly to Los Angeles back when I was a youth. So comic books, and specifically Marvel comic books, but even when I got older, I got into DC because when I was, an older teenager, that's when DC was like the edgy comic book company because they had, The Watchmen and Sandman and The Killing Joke and a bunch of, graphic novels like that. So yeah, comic books is a part of our DNA.
Oh, so my question is there a character that you would love to tackle in a movie, TV show that you?
Wow, great question.
Heart out for.
I'm not just making it up. There's so many. Number one, I feel like, because I've been looking at a lot of DC characters lately. Raven is a character that I feel like has never really gotten her just due. I think, believe it or not, Animal Man that comic book from I think it's from the 80s, or it's either from the late 80s or the early 90s, but Animal Man, so funny. And I feel like you could do a funny, not like Deadpool funny, but like a different kind of funny comic book movie based on Animal Man. And in fact, I've been trying to find out who owns the rights to Animal Man so that maybe we could interpret it. Cyborg was always a big popular character with me. Loved Bishop from the X-Men. I liked a lot of black characters because, it was nice to see, one of our characters. Some of my favorite artists were Jim Lee and Jay Lee. Always going to be a Kirby fan. There are certain, I was always a big Frank Miller fan. Found out he's we don't see eye to eye on a lot of politics, sadly, me and Frank Miller. But, I've always thought Frank Miller did a damn good comic. And yeah, so my comic love goes deep. But if you're talking strictly characters, yeah, I'd like to see somebody do something with Raven, maybe in the style of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And then as far as the Marvel characters, I just feel like they've been picked over a lot more. But anything that I feel has been overlooked will always be exciting to me. Just for the record, we tried to pitch a spinoff of a very popular movie franchise that I feel like a lot of comic book people like, even though it's not based on a comic book, but it seems to come up at a lot of comic book conventions. And sadly, the rights owners didn't see it the way that we see it. But we like to take those minor characters that might have been in just like one or two storylines, one or two scenes if it's a movie, and then build a whole universe around that character to show that not just Marvel has the ability to build this universe out. I think universe building and world building is really fun as a creator, and it's been that way since I used to play with action figures.
Could we ask what character that was?
Yeah. Sorry. I don't mean to too much during the interview. I'm so thirsty. I'm outside in the garage. It's super hot. You know what? We're still in talks with that movie studio, so let me not put that one out there. But okay. But I'll give you an example. Like, to me, I love the fact that Donald Glover is doing the Lando series for Disney Plus. To me, like that's the way to go. Like, you don't have to keep following the Skywalker clan. Go with some of these characters that we love. If it's Indiana Jones, go with the character that we love. If it's, I still wish somebody would reboot The Last Starfighter. I think that's a great storyline. Amazing gamer gets recruited into an intergalactic war. I'm a sucker for those kind of storylines, and I think that there should be more reboots in that vein, as opposed to just taking the central property that everybody knows and loves and just rebooting that. No, take some of those secondary characters and build your own universes off of that.
Wow. So actually, we're going to veer off a little bit for a minute. Speaking of Donald Glover, you had a series at HBO planned called Brothers Atlanta.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it never saw light. May I ask what happened to it?
You tell me. I mean, we sold an idea about a show taking place in my hometown of Atlanta in 2011. That's how young and bushy-tailed we were. We were just like, yeah, we have this show. It's going to be on HBO any year now. And we knew it was going to take time to develop. We ended up doing a show called The Reporters first. Mm-hmm. And The Reporters, we shot that in 2013. Great cast in that. Eric Andre was our sort of our foil character in that. And it was a great show. And then the president of HBO got fired, and they brought in a new president. And the new president said, I don't want to do the show that you made with that other president. Let's do the show that I think you should make. And then we did Brothers in Atlanta, which was, a show that we really believed in, because it was going to be me as a struggling, aging DJ, and my writing partner Bashir is like a aging actor, both trying to make it creatively in Atlanta. It was going to be this wonderful allegory for trying to make it in your 30s when you're in Hollywood, and they're already people 10 years younger than you creeping up behind. We had an amazing cast of Maya Rudolph and Jaden Smith, and just a really solid cast of people. And at one point we had Donald Glover involved, but this is around 2014 at this point, maybe early 2015. He was saying that he wanted to go back on tour. We understood that. He was already Childish Gambino. Mm-hmm. And by the time he got back from tour, He was like, I'm gonna do my own show about Atlanta, and we know how that worked out. Meanwhile, our own show in Atlanta was stalled out. And this is what I'll say about it, is that we don't think there's any reason or rule why Hollywood should allow only one. Why there should only be one show about Atlanta on TV. Like if you live in Atlanta, and I know both you and I have family and friends there. Mm-hmm. It's just like New York. It's just like LA. Like there's so many ways to interpret the city, even if you're black and interpreting the city. I've always felt like it's racist. I hate to go there. It's racist that Hollywood feels like, okay, well, we did a black show about Atlanta. What else do you guys got? Like, they would never say that if we based our show in New York, or even if there was a white show in Atlanta and another white show in Atlanta. You just never run against that resistance. We've hit that resistance since Donald's show debuted, and our show mysteriously went away the second his show went to series. So, Brothers in Atlanta would have been a very different show. I always say that Atlanta is a phenomenal, historic, hilarious show, and it represents Donald. I think our show would have been more like almost like a Curb Your Enthusiasm in Atlanta. And it was made by me and by other people from Atlanta. So you'd hear references to the local news anchors, and you'd hear references to, Falcons, and you'd hear references to things that are uniquely Atlanta that I don't ever foresee being a part of Donald Glover's Atlanta, because again, that's one creator and we're a different creator and we have a different style and a different energy. So, if I ever have a frustration with this business, it's that sometimes it overthinks things and it doesn't let the creator create. All that said, I think that there will come a time when, for various reasons, I'll get a chance to do a show about Atlanta, because Atlanta, I lived there for the first 18 years of my life before I went away to college. I love the city. I think there's so much that makes it unique that I've never seen on Donald's Atlanta or the Real Housewives of Atlanta. My Atlanta doesn't typically get seen. Mm-hmm. And my Atlanta was Hosea Williams. My Atlanta was Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young, and some of these, is the Neighborhood Arts Center, which I think your family knows about. Ralph David Abernathy. Like, there's a cultural and artistic history in Atlanta that doesn't often get mentioned. The Black Shrine of Madonna comes to mind, and the West End Shopping Mall. I want to do the Atlanta that I know, and I think at some point we'll get that chance to do that Atlanta.
Wow. So earlier you mentioned you sold your comic book collection to move out to LA. Can you tell about how you first broke into the industry?
Well, I can tell you how the industry first made me broke. It was selling my comics. But yeah, I got into the business in the most roundabout way. I started off 2 weeks after I hit LA. I was already an assistant at Paramount through a family friend. My sister Dab had done some casting out here. She was a casting director out here. She made some calls through a mutual friend. They got me on a desk at Paramount. So, I'm 21 years old. I think I just turned 21, and I was already working on a desk, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do in this business. And so I started DJing by night. And before I knew it, I didn't work at Paramount anymore. I was DJing for a living at the standard hotels out here, for anybody who's ever been in LA. And, I was having a great time, early 20s, DJ at some of LA's hottest night spots. It was a lot of fun. But then, my friend Bashir moved out here from college, and we were talking about how TV just didn't reflect what we thought was funny. And it seemed like it was 10 or 15 years past its prime. So then we just started doing a sketch show every week. And at the time, we just casted with our friends, and nobody was famous. But, the group, it was a very small group. The group was me, Bashir, this woman named Nefertari, Robin Thede, Wyatt Cenac. Like, we were just a very small group. Again, nobody was famous. And these are people who I always joke with them. I'm like, hey, we should do our group was called Cleo's Apartment. I'm like, we should do a Cleo's Apartment reunion now that the world knows Robin Thede. Everybody loves Wyatt. Bashir and I have had some success. Nefertari is all over our show Southside. She plays Keisha. So I think that it'd be a lot of fun to reassemble that group because, I remember when everybody had a compact, car and, had more roommates than you wanted. So that was the first time we did anything. Our sketch show got some buzz. Off of the buzz, we got a deal with HBO to do web shows, just to do web shows. And our web shows caught the attention of Comedy Central. They put us on the David Allen Greer show, Chocolate News. And before that show was even off the air, we got a call saying that Jimmy Fallon was going to take over not the Tonight Show at the time. It was a Late Night with Conan O'Brien. He's going to take over Late Night. It was going to be called Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. And packed up my bags and moved across from coast to coast. And we were there. We were the fourth and fifth people he ever hired. And while I was there, I wrote Slow Jam the News, including Slow Jam the News with President Obama. I did History of Rap, which was based on my DJing. You know, it's basically taking a hip hop set and putting it into the mouths of Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake. You know, we had a lot of success there. I played Barack Obama a couple of times on Fallon's show. That was before the beard, obviously. And you know, that was the real break. You know, Jimmy Fallon was our real break in this business for sure.
So, did you have any connection in getting the Roots?
No, the Roots came on the day before we got there. They became the house band literally the day before we got there.
Wow.
So I remember when we popped in. Now, I had met Questlove outside of a Tower Records by Lenox Square Mall in Atlanta, you know, about 1999 or somewhere in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's Questlove from the Roots. And he stood there and talked albums with us. And I thought he was so cool. And then here it was 10 years later, and we were working on the same show. We've stayed friends. I would say we've stayed frenemies. Anytime I go online to do anything, he pops up in the comments, you know, hating. Like, just like, oh, that ain't true. He lying. And I'm like, Quest, you're such a hater. So it's just become a thing between us.
Did you instantly know each other when you saw each other again?
No. Trust me, when I was just that kid outside of a Tower Records trying to talk to Quest, you know, like, he's a nice guy. That's the thing. He's a friendly guy. He'll talk to anybody if he has the time, you know. So no, he didn't remember that kid, but you know, it obviously left an impression on me because I was a huge hip hop fan at the time, you know.
Mm-hmm. So going back to Sherman's Showcase, you have a character called First Man.
Yeah.
You ever feel like you could go the Saturday Night Live route and take some of those characters, develop other projects with them?
I would love to do a First Man cartoon. I think that would be so fun to do that. I would say there are about 4 or 5 Sherman Showcase ideas that I think could be their own thing. I've had a lot of people ask who watched the Black History Month Spectacular in June if we were going to do a whole series based on the Harlem Renaissance. Because a lot of those characters that we portray, from Paul Robeson to Adelaide Hall, like, these are famous people at the time, but they've never been portrayed in a Hollywood film. And that's unfortunate. You know, there are a lot of jazz greats. You know, I can see I've got Coltrane behind me right here. There are a lot of jazz greats who've never been represented in any TV show and in any movie, which is weird because there's some, you know, rock stars who've been portrayed like 8 times, 12 times. But they're these legends who some of them never been portrayed. So, you know, we've been asked, will we do First Man or the Harlem Renaissance show? Or look, I think whatever is clever. We also have to figure out who owns it, because the second we do something on Sherman Showcase, I think AMC technically owns a good portion of the IP, and so we'd have to work with them, you know, with our share of the IP and their share of the IP. Anybody want to talk entertainment law? It's really fascinating. It makes for great Facebook TV. But it's actually, you know, that would actually be a great show for somebody to do, because it's what you need to know to protect yourself. You know, I think that a lot of times we will put things on Sherman's that we think should be TV shows just so we can plant our flag in the general idea, so that if somebody comes along and does it, they can be like, oh, Sherman's did that first. So that's us. That's our plan.
Wow. So still talking about Sherman Showcase, you play a character, you fill in cameos as band members most of the time. Are those all the same character, or are those just fun cameos you like to do?
Which band characters you talk about?
Oh man, so I gotta think of this. Neo's band, you play a character. Marina Del Rey, you play a character. Are they all the same?
I will say this: everything in Sherman Showcase has a little bit of backstory and lore, and you know, so if you watch all of season 1, you come to find out that those Frederick Douglass commercials that we shoot on the stage are not actually only based on those actual Frederick Douglass commercials in the real Soul Train. In fact, there's a whole time travel aspect on the show where that Frederick Douglass is not the real Frederick Douglass. He's a black man named Frederick Douglass, and he's been time traveling to make tons of money off of almanacs the same way that Biff did in the Back to the Future movies. I say all that just to say there may be a reason in season 2 why you see my character Dutch pop up in so many bands. There may be a reason for that. But, we like to plant those Easter eggs and then blow people's minds in future episodes. Because, again, we read a lot of comic books, and we love the idea of a long con. Like, the idea that, like, you can be watching it and laughing at it, and then you find out that that one little weird detail that you noticed actually meant something. Almost like, it's not like you have to watch this like Game of Thrones, like every episode leads to another episode. But, like, if you're watching closely, once again, there's like an extra layer of a joke in there for you. So I guess my long-winded way of saying is we might explain why my character pops up in so many bands next season.
Okay. So going back to Southside, which we haven't gone into, did ideas from Brothers in Atlanta transition into Southside?
There are some. I mean, there are some ideas. Like, we had originally thought of doing an episode because I grew up, in Atlanta, where every time some new Jordans came out, there would be this crazy line at Walters downtown. A lot of Morehouse dudes know what Walters is about.
Okay, I know what Walters is. Yep.
Oh, you know Walters? Okay, yeah, exactly. I mean, like, and I feel like that was even more of a thing before you could just order shoes online on the internet. Like, there's a time when, geographically speaking, the only place you were probably going to get rare sneakers was at Walters, or like this one other place whose name I can't remember, because you couldn't just go online and order that stuff. So, and by the way, kids would come over from Japan and stand in line in downtown Atlanta, not speaking any English, ready to buy some new rare shoes. So, when I see things like that, when we get to carry them out the way that we want to carry them out on Southside, it makes me happy. Because Southside is a lot more like Brothers in Atlanta than Sherman Showcase. You've got sort of a grounded world of realistic characters all living, whereas Atlanta was going to be sort of like our Springfield on The Simpsons. Chicago is sort of that, and specifically the South Side is that for Southside. So you might see a character as a bus driver for one line in one episode, but then we'll build an entire episode about that bus driver 2 episodes later, because it's all a little bit like the play Our Town. Like, we want to give you like a very rich and full picture of what life is actually like to live on the South Side of Chicago, especially at a time when people use Chicago as a weapon in political debates. You get people up there trying to talk like Chicago's just a constant hellhole. And look, Chicago has its challenges. The South Side of Chicago has its challenges. But talk to the people who live there, and they resent the fact that their community is being presented as this place where everybody wakes up thinking they're going to get shot and end up the victim of violence. Like, it's not like that. In fact, when we were shooting there, people would go out of their way to come up to us and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm so happy y'all are shooting a comedy here, because life on the South Side has moments of pure joy and bliss and hilarity and fun, and that's not what we get to see a lot." So, as opposed to these demagoguing, politicians who want to, talk about Chicago's so terrible, we wanted to give people the full picture and let them decide for ourselves. We don't sugarcoat, but we definitely let people know that Chicago is a beautiful town, and the South Side is a beautiful community.
So, okay, venturing off into your other ventures, Baby Driver, one of the things you worked on. What was your involvement in Baby Driver?
In Baby Driver? Oh, Baby Driver came about in a really interesting way. So for Baby Driver, it was because we were shooting Brothers in Atlanta at the time that my agent at that time reached out and said that Edgar Wright wanted to talk to me. Now, I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan, have been since Shaun of the Dead, and I think that he's a brilliant director. So I was like, yeah, of course. And he was like, look, man, I want to do this movie. It's going to be shot all in Atlanta. Let me send you the script. And I want you to help me out with the music. Now, the thing that's kind of funny, and I hope he's cool with me telling this story, is that the second I read the script, I called him frantically. And I was like, hey, man, just so you know, because he's British. He wouldn't know this. I was like, in your script, you have characters saying stuff like, I'm on the 85. Oh. I was like, nobody in Atlanta would call it the 85. Like, that's an LA thing. In LA, we don't say, I-10. We say the 10. We don't say I-405. We say the 405. But in Atlanta, as you might know, we say I-20, I-85, I-75. So I was like, this is gonna sound fake if you say this. You gotta tell John Hamm and the rest of your cast they gotta say I before the number on the freeway. And he was like, too late. We've already shot half the movie. I was like, okay, well, I can't save you there. But I was like, musically, we can definitely get some cool music prompts in there. And so we did. And he wanted to focus on sort of older music from Atlanta. Like we tried to get a couple of rap songs cleared, but it was very difficult because, sometimes Ludacris didn't want to say yes. Sometimes it was a very expensive sample. I think we got one hip hop cue in there, but yeah, basically I was just there to help him with the music, and I was so happy to see the finished product because I feel like that movie moves with the music, like in ways that most movies don't. Like you never get a sense that the music isn't a part of the scene, which I love about that movie.
So you talked about Chicago and some of the perceptions of today's political structure. As a news organization, we're obligated to ask you this. What commentary would you like to provide as we find ourselves in this country today?
I feel hopeful, despite the fact that there are federal agents whisking people off the street, with no name tags and putting them into vehicles that are unmarked rental vehicles. I think this current administration is completely tyrannical. That's my take on it. But I also feel hopeful because I've never seen our community this serious, this focused. Just I feel like we're at a different place now than we were a year ago, and I don't see us going back, and I don't see us going back. I mean, like I think that right now is a time that we can really make some strides and some progress. I love to see a new generation running for local office because I've always believed that local office is where you make the greatest change. And I'd like to see some of the people who are emerging on the national scene. Hakeem Jeffries seems to be a really good guy. I don't know any of these people personally, but I see a lot of people entering politics, and it makes me think some of the things that have always really bugged me. Like one thing that I've never liked, even when I was a kid, the matter of DC statehood. I never understood how Washington D.C. couldn't be a state. That's taxation without representation. We did fight a war for that. We fought a war even when we weren't free for that. So I think things like DC statehood, maybe we can accomplish that in my time. Maybe we can abolish, the electoral college in my lifetime. I think that, I love to see people on the streets. I love people in the streets wearing masks and keeping safe because the virus is real. I feel encouraged by the changes that we've seen of late. And, as always, we need to arrest the officers who killed Breonna Taylor in her house. We need to seek justice against those who killed George Floyd. And, I've been perpetually angry about this since Eric Garner and Tamir Rice. I mean, just recently we saw them arrest a man who had shot people, and yet they killed Tamir Rice when he had a toy gun, but they won't, but they don't do, they don't treat other people like us. So again, I think that, given the current state of affairs, I like to think that, all these people mobilize is going to lead to some great change. And I know that, I'm always willing to, be a part of that change, because I think the change starts with us, then it starts in our communities, which is local, and then it spreads out from there. But again, I think we right now it feels like we might actually have the wind at our back. So I hope that we can make a lot of progress.
Do you tend to, or do you use Sherman Showcase and Southside to put messages in there for progression or progressive ideals?
Well, let me say, I think that it happens because you have two Black creators at the top of the food chain on those shows. You know what I mean? Like, because we're both Black and because we both come from socially conscious backgrounds, I think my father was a socially conscious painter, a member of the Los Angeles Revolutionary Watts scene of the late '60s, who moved to Atlanta to become a part of that artistic scene there. I think Bashir's father is a accomplished imam. He was raised Muslim. He's not practicing anymore, Bashir isn't, but we were both raised in extremely black environments to large black families. I think I don't want to say it happens by accident, but I think our world point of view comes through in our writing. And even though we're trying to make you laugh, I think inevitably we get you to think. Because when I see what other people do, I'm often like, who's their father? Who's their mom? Like, how can they think this is okay in 2020? Like, I think we were raised to be, to have pride in our culture, to be respectful of our women. And I think that comes through in the humor. Because here's the thing. We do what we think is funny, and we couldn't think it was funny if it was disrespectful to our people and disrespectful to our black women in particular. Like it wouldn't, as the expression goes, it would hit differently. And I think that we go out of our way just to make the big, beautiful black families that we had at our kitchen table. Like that's our approach to comedy, is to try and figure out ways to make them laugh. And if they're laughing, then we don't really care about the rest. Let the rest come. Let the rest come to the table and appreciate it. I think comedy is universal. I love Seinfeld. I thought that show was hilarious. I had never had a marble rye, but I thought it was funny that everybody was running around trying to get the last loaf of marble rye. I always tell people that that's sort of, what our Jordan's episode of Southside is like, So, yeah, I think that we're I'll just say we were uniquely raised to do humor that I think inevitably addresses what is relevant now. And I'll give one last example of that. We wrote a song called "Add Some Kente." It's a Chicago house song to the Black History Month special called "Add Some Kente." We wrote that 8 months ago, and then it was right when Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer put on some kente cloth that all of a sudden everybody's talking about kente. And our video for "Add Some Kente" came out, and people were like, "Oh, did you guys record this last week?" They thought we were following the news cycle, when the news cycle was really coming around to what Black people have been talking about since at least the 1960s, when Karanga and others were like, you got to start wearing, kente cloth. Like kente cloth, I feel like kente cloth, I even make a joke about it in the song. Kente cloth was like the flannel in my family. It was like Black people's flannel. So kente cloth's been there since the beginning. We're going to keep doing what we think is really, really funny. Because it makes us laugh, and if the culture comes around to us, then that's cool. But I think we always have to do what we think is good.
So we have 2 minutes left. So is there anything you would like to say to our wonderful audience before we head out?
Yeah, I would say, well, first off, I want to say, please vote. I think that it's so important that all of us get our ballots, mail them in early so that they count, so that we can have change sooner, not later. Keep your eyes open, be prepared. Don't fall for the lies that come across sometimes, sadly, on Facebook and other places that say things like, the virus is fake, don't wear a mask. Don't fall for any of that. Please give our shows a watch, because I think you will laugh with your family. We have the John Legend produced Sherman Showcase on Hulu. You can if you have a Hulu subscription, it's free. It costs you literally nothing more than you're already spending. So go check that out. And our Black History Month Spectacular in June, which is on AMC.com. And people ask, why is it called the Black History Month Spectacular if it's in June? That's sort of the point. When we originally pitched that show, we wanted it to be the Black History Month special. And then the world went crazy, and we couldn't get it out in time for February. And they told us, well, it's coming out in June. So we were like, hey, every month should be Black History Month. So this is going to be the Black History Month Spectacular in June. Watch it. I think you'll really enjoy it. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riddle. And that's our time. Thank you to our wonderful
Thank you, Noah.
At the NNPA. Thank you, Black Press USA. And be sure to read more Blurred Binder coming to you soon. We'd like to show a clip of Sherman Showcase before we head out.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And fight for social justice as we muster all over this country today, right on? Yeah, show you right. And it goes down here every Saturday morning at the Jabba Joint, right before the amazing Chad and the Chan Clan. Now, our first guest took a year off to find himself in the motherland, St. Louis. But now he's back to debut his new song, That Ain't Right, the incomparable Jackie Redmond.
Get it. Get it. Get it. When you throw out some trash and somebody come by and say, hey, brother, that's not trash.
That Ain't Right became one of the biggest songs on the planet that Saturday morning. And Sherman McDaniels had a hit show.
My man, you give me Jackie Redmond.
Play clip 13 from last week.
Get it. Get it. Get it. You know, when the TV guys say Point Break's on, but they can turn to it, and it's the one from 2015. I need my Swayze. That ain't right. That ain't right. Paper straws, yeah. That ain't right. Why am I sucking liquid through some paper? That ain't right.
Sherman Showcase has come a long way in the past 4.5 decades.
But I'm far from finished.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Have I been saying that right, sir?
Thank you so much, Mr. Riddle. We appreciate you coming on the show. We wish you the best luck on all your ventures, and we look forward to season 2 of Southside and Sherman Showcase.
Thank you, Noah.
All right. You all have a great day.